Good afternoon. Hey, AnnieLaurie.
Hi.
Welcome everybody to Wayfind Marketing Live, where we know is hard, but it doesn't have to be. So we have made it our mission, our goal, our purpose to encourage and equip you, business owners, nonprofit leaders, and marketers to make marketing easier. We want to give you the tools and the information that you need so you can conquer your marketing and grow your business. And so today, couple of quick things. We are live. So if you're joining us live, thank you. We'd love to hear questions, comments from you. So feel free to type some comments in. Let us know you're here if you've got questions as we go through this. Also, we've been live streaming on Tuesdays and Fridays. Now we're focused on Fridays. We'll do other live streams occasionally, but just to make the best use of our time and to bring the best resources and content to everybody, we're focused on Fridays and helping you simplify your marketing. And so, again, you can win more business. And I'm Steve Phipps. I'm the founder and president of Wayfind Marketing. And my co-host is AnnieLaurie Walters, who's been a member of our team for a long time and helps with content and strategy and is a force to be reckoned with.
Force of nature.
And we've known each other since college. And so glad to have you on here.
Yeah.
So going back to our last show, this is going to be the second part of a 4-part series. And what we're talking about is the stages that our customers go through. And this is really the stages of relationship. And by understanding these 3 stages, it equips you as a marketer, as a business owner, as a nonprofit leader to more effectively reach your audience. Because there are certain things that you want to do at each of these stages. So we want to help you understand what those stages are, how to market to people. And those 3 stages, if you weren't here with us last week, which if you missed it, go back. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it on our website, wayfindmarketing.com. You can also catch it on podcast. So just search for wayfindmarketing.com/live. This is episode number 12, where we talk about the 3 stages. The first is curiosity. And that's where people really they want to know what you do. Number 2 is enlightenment. And that's when they start asking more questions. They want to really dig in, and that's an opportunity to build trust. And then the 3rd stage is commitment. And that's when people start making decisions. They start taking steps forward to do business with you. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about the curiosity stage. How do you market to your customers, to your audience, to your prospects, so that their brains, as they're gathering information and making these snap judgments and these quick decisions, how do they determine that you are relevant, that you have the potential to solve their problem, and that it's worth their time to learn more? Because if you miss that, you're going to miss opportunities. So we're going to talk about that. So again, this whole idea of curiosity. And again, it's based on this whole idea of relationship. And that's what we want to do. Good marketing, good communication helps build a trust-based relationship where you show how your brand, your product, your service, your nonprofit can help solve a problem, and why your customer, your audience should move forward with you. But before we do that, I think we want to talk about something that's fun, some childhood memories.
We were talking about curiosity, and I was just thinking about Curious George. My daughter loves Curious George. And so I watch a lot of George at my house, and he's always getting into trouble. Curiosity can sometimes get you into trouble. But I think a lot of times, like you were just saying, curiosity is the foundation of relationship. That's when a relationship begins. It's because you're curious about somebody or something. And so you start to pursue it. And that's what begins this whole process that we're talking about, the 3 stages that the customer moves through. But did you have any thoughts about how Curious George applies to this?
Well, same thing here. I have 5 kids, and frankly, of all the kids books that I read to my kids, Curious George is one of the ones that I enjoy the most. And And absolutely, this whole idea of curiosity is just, it's part of our nature. It's part of our DNA. We are by nature curious creatures. We want to know. We want to understand the world around us, and that very much ties into this very first stage of our customer journey, our customer relationship. Now, Curious George, of course, would get himself into trouble, but at the end of the day, he always became the hero. He always came in, was able to save the day, whatever the scenario was. So
we figured out a way to fix.
Yeah, absolutely, and it absolutely, Curious George. In fact, I had a little picture of George that I'll toss up here on the screen.
Oh.
So George is a lot of fun, but I think we can learn from him from some of our marketing as well.
Yeah. Great. Well, then let's just dive in. Let's talk about this curiosity piece of the puzzle and what we can learn from it to apply to our marketing strategy.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing that we want to think about at this stage is what's happening. What is your customer doing at this stage? Like, what does this look like tactically? And really the big thing that our customers and our prospects are asking at this stage is, what do you do? And that is the most fundamental question that people are going to ask. And you might be watching or listening thinking, well, yeah, I get that. That's why are you telling me something I already know? Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because a lot of times what happens is brands don't clearly communicate what they do on their website, in their sales decks, in conversation. When somebody says, what do you do? AnnieLaurie, you've been to events like that, I'm sure, where you talk to somebody and you ask that question, what do you do? And all of a sudden that person, it's almost like you can see him stepping back and just winding up, and they're going to tell you the 28 different things that they do. And immediately you're regretting asking that question.
Yes, I've been there.
And the same thing happens on people's websites. Somebody goes to your website. Well, what do you do? Well, you know what? You list out a gazillion different things on your website. Well, what's happening is that's creating confusion. And again, the brain is just instinctively asking this question, what do you do? And when there's confusion, you're going to lose business. The expression that we use, and we kind of borrowed this from Donald Miller over at StoryBrand, is if you confuse, you will lose. You're going to lose business. You're going to lose opportunities.
What are some examples in this first stage?
Well, so a good one could be like we just talked about a minute ago. If you're at a networking event and you're going to have these conversations, people are going to ask you, hey, AnnieLaurie, what do you do? Hey, Bob, what do you do? And that's an immediate opportunity to clearly communicate the value that you provide. But a lot of times people just unload. Well, so for me, it'd be like, oh, well, I do marketing. But their eyes are glossing over. So to be able to communicate in a way that actually engages them. And because again, their brain is making a quick determination as soon as they meet me. Okay, is Steve worth my time? Does he offer something that would help me survive and thrive? Or am I better off going back to the buffet line?
It's so true. I used to work in DC, and it's all about networking, and every day you're doing something. And I remember when I was first in DC and I was going to these events, and you say, oh, what do you do? Or where do you work? And they're like, well, I work at the ATF, ABCDEFG. And I'm like, what is that? And no curiosity, just like eyes are glazing over.
Yeah, I can imagine there's no lack of different initials for organizations there.
Yeah. It's like a whole dictionary you got to memorize just to be able to survive at a cocktail party. It's
well, and so another good example is somebody going to your website. And again, whether they get there because they went to a search engine, they were referred by somebody, however they get there, again, they're asking the question, what do you do? And why does it matter to me? And you want to be able to answer those questions within the first 5 to 10 seconds that somebody's there. Again, these are decisions that are happening very quickly.
Yeah, I know. I was just on a website today. I mean, it's a local establishment, so I'm not gonna throw them under the bus, but it was like a we're opening, or they're trying to communicate their reopening plan, and they're telling everything they're gonna do and how it's gonna be social distance. But I'm like, when? I didn't see the day. And I'm like, what? Why don't I see when? That should be the first thing at the top, big bold letters. Like, I'm so glad to know all the things you're doing to keep me safe, but when is this happening?
Well, and one of the things that is a company that we always recommend to our clients, or if I'm coaching somebody, is be clear. Don't worry about being clever. If you can be clear and clever, that's great. That's a double win. But at this stage of the game in particular, focus on being clear. And
not just clear versus clever, but clear versus fancy. Sometimes I think that the cutting edge design or some real nifty bell and whistle on a website could be just as distracting from the clarity as trying to be clever too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point.
Yeah, those are tempting to want to have because they look cool, but it doesn't matter if it looks cool if it's not doing what it's meant to do. So
absolutely.
Yeah. When we talk about this curiosity stage, I was reading in Donald Miller's book on Marketing Made Simple about this idea of like sorting the mail. Like when you get the mail and you're sorting the mail and you're like, you're kind of making this keep pile and a discard pile. And, that's kind of what the people are doing when they come to our website, right? Like this whole idea of like trying to filter through whether or not this matters. Is this what I'm looking for? So can you speak to that a little bit and kind of give that more teeth?
Absolutely. So if we think about how our brain functions when it's making decisions, especially on the front end, when we're seeing something for the first time, or maybe it's the first time in a long time, our brain is quickly making these snap decisions. Is this relevant or is this irrelevant? Because we get bombarded by thousands of messages a day, whether it's text messages, Facebook Messenger, Instagram. We're constantly bombarded by noise, advertisements, etc. And so the brain is just wired to make these quick decisions. There's a great book called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. And it just talks about how our brain just subconsciously is making all these decisions and we're really not even aware of it. And so that's what's happening when somebody goes to our website. They go to your website, they go to, they have a conversation. They're not even consciously going, hey, is this relevant? They just look and go, okay, yeah, I see what they do. That makes sense. That's something that would be of interest to me. And the brain is really kind of asking, is this going to help me survive? Is this going to help me thrive? How is this going to make my life better? And all the words, all the images, everything on the website, whatever's in your sales deck, your brochures, your conversation, all these things need to help answer those basic questions because, again, snap decisions. These are quick and sometimes in a matter of seconds, you could be tossed onto the irrelevant pile and you miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's why, like, we talked about at one point stoking the curiosity, like, something that's going to make them want to come back and remember you, especially like if you think about social media and how you're flying through 1,000 messages, like you gotta have something that curiosity can be like a hook, something that's going to hook or stick with to where, they might be later, but they remember, oh, I want to go back and check that out. Like without that curiosity hook, you miss that opportunity to kind of plant the seed in the brain. So how else is our brain working in this stage? Like what other ways, what are things we learn about just how the brain works that apply with the curiosity piece?
One of the things, and we talk about opening in a story loop. Right. And every good story introduces a problem very early in the story, whether it's a book, whether it's a movie, because if there's no problem, there's no story. There's nothing compelling. And what happens is when we open one of these story loops, what that does is that introduces a situation that's unresolved. And by the very nature of introducing a problem, especially whoever our audience is, we want to introduce a problem that's relevant to them, that they want to solve. So by introducing a problem, stating what the problem is on your website. Again, a lot of websites never mention the problem that they're solving. And when you do that, when you introduce the problem, and again, that's a a good formula for a social media post: introduce a problem, then talk about the solution. But if your website, if your sales pitch doesn't clearly identify the problem that needs to be solved, you're missing an opportunity to open that story loop, to pique some curiosity in your audience's brain that engages them enough that they go, okay, this is relevant. I want to learn more. How do they solve this problem? So that's a really fundamental way to engage with that curiosity.
I was reading something about the halo effect. What exactly is that? I wasn't sure what that was all about.
Yeah. So, of course, we've all heard the adage that you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And there's this phenomenon called the halo effect. And the idea is that the very first interaction we have with a person, with a business, with a brand, that flavors what we think, feel, and believe about that person, that brand moving forward. So if I meet someone and the first thing I notice about that person is they have really bad breath, well, that could certainly taint my perspective of that person moving forward. Same kind of thing in terms of if I go to somebody's website and it looks bad, it's clunky, it looks outdated, it's confusing. That business might be the best choice in terms of who can solve my problem, who can help make my life, my business better. However, my first impression is not a good impression. Right. My first impression is it's just they seem outdated, or there's not clarity on what they do or how they communicate it. So my brain is making these notes, and so it can be more of a hill to have to climb up for that brand in order to win my business. So that halo effect is important, because the first impression that we make, it affects the interactions after that. So that's why we want to be clear. We want to help that brain understand we're relevant. We have the ability to solve your problem.
So what types of questions is the curious brain asking? This is what makes us think of Curious George, probably.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, some of the basic questions that we ask about something new. Okay, what is it? In this case of a business, what do you do? What are your services? What are your products? If you're a nonprofit, who do you support? How do you work? And they're just trying to get that basic information. Who do you serve? Am I even your target audience? So a lot of it's just this very fundamental, basic questions, just so they understand. It's almost like going to a new city. You're looking for the fundamentals. Where's the grocery store? Where's the bank? If you're looking for a church, where are some of the local churches? Where's the school? You're just looking for those basic landmarks to get the lay of the land, understand how you fit into all that. So that's really, it's those fundamental basic questions. Because, and again, this is all happening in the matter of just, it's these snap judgments. And we want to make sure that it's clear so that they hang around where we can start building trust. And that's what we're going to talk about more next week, is that enlightenment stage, where when you've been able to show that you're relevant, then they hang around, and then you have the opportunity to start building trust and distinguishing yourself from everybody else.
So we talk a lot in these conversations about the brain is looking for things that are going to help a person survive and thrive. And when I think about that, I kind of have this, whole image of, Bear Grylls, like in the wilderness. Like how do I think about this in terms of business, or you know what I mean? Like what's the connection there?
So when it comes to business, once upon a time, survival literally meant survival. And in some places in the world, that's still the case. It's those very basic fundamental things that a person, that a culture, that a society needs to survive, to make it to the next day. Well, now when we talk about survival, a lot of times we're not talking so much about we help this person find food. Now, again, there's certainly scenarios out there where that is the that's a real struggle.
Sure.
In terms of most businesses and nonprofits, what we're talking about are basic things. And there's a resource, and we can put this in the show notes. But there's what's called the value pyramid, and it's over at Harvard Business Review. This is from an organization called Bain and Company. And basically, what they've done is they've identified 30 different things, and they talk about functional, sort of the foundation. I've got a picture of it here that I'll put up on the screen for just a moment, but it's gonna be too hard. It's gonna be too small to really zoom in on, but. Down here at the very bottom, these are the fundamental things. So a good way to communicate. So this is one of those things we talk about, encouraging and equipping. So this is part of equipping. Is your messaging helping people understand how you help them survive everyday life, survive in their context, in the context of how you serve them? So down here at the bottom, this is functional. And this is things like, how do you save people time? How do you help them save money or reduce their efforts? How do you connect them? Are you connecting them to other resources that make their life easier and better? Do you help them organize? Do you reduce risk? So these are all fundamental kinds of things. And this is where, again, communicating quickly, clearly. What do you do? Why does it matter to me? Those are two fundamental questions people ask when they get to your website, when they engage with you. Well, this gives you an idea. This next level up here is emotional. So this is, how do you reduce their anxiety? How do we, make their wellness? How do we improve the quality of life? Their attractiveness, fun, and entertainment. And then up here, we start getting into things like life-changing. And this is where we start getting into this idea of thriving. And you create motivation for people, or you give them a sense of belonging, a sense of community. Self-actualization, so it's these different levels, and some brands play very much in the thriving and luxury cars. That's not about survival. That's about having an identity. That's a sense of belonging, a sense of exclusiveness. That's thriving. Some brands, they're going to focus on, Walmart. Hey, we're going to save you money. Geico, we're going to save you money. It's on those basic thriving, those basic survival kinds of things. So as you're thinking about this for your organization, you want to think about that. Are you communicating that? Are you telling people, here's how we help you survive? Because that's what the brain's looking for. And when you can communicate that, you're establishing that you are relevant and you're worth your audience spending more time investigating and learning more and giving you the opportunity to build trust.
That's such a great resource. We'll definitely put that link in our show notes. Wherever you're watching this, we'll make sure that link is available. But, it was reminding me of something. I started my career in the news business, and it's a common phrase, but don't bury the lead. I think a lot of times with people's websites, when they're trying to be clever or they're trying to be fancy, they're burying the lead of which of those things on that pyramid they're going to do to help their customer. So it's like, don't bury the lead. don't hide or unintentionally put the most important thing behind layers of clever or fancy or brand. Make sure that you're not burying the lead. Tell them straight out what you're going to do.
Absolutely. Be clear. Don't worry. If you can be clever and clear, fantastic, but always err on the side of clarity.
So what is the best way? Is there a best way or best practice, or what are some examples of good ways to show them how we help them survive and thrive?
So, a couple of things here. One is, on your website, have a clear headline. When somebody goes to your site, you want it to be clearly listed across the top what you do. Don't make people guess. We talk about this. And it's called the grunt test. And the grunt test is when somebody gets to your website. Let's assume a caveman's going to your website. Okay. So somebody's got a caveman as their audience. Caveman goes to your website. Can they understand? Looks like we froze there for a minute. When somebody gets to your website, do they clearly understand what you do? Just tell them, here's what we do. Here's who we do it for. Okay. So have a clear headline, have a supporting statement underneath of that can help give that clarity. Now, another thing is what we call it. Another thing is what we call a one-liner. And a one-liner is a simple answer to the question, what do you do? And that's something you can use in conversation. You can put it in your email, put it in brochures. And that's the problem you solve, the solution that you provide, and then the benefit that generates. And so that simple one-liner exercise, those are two easy things. A website headline and a supporting statement that tell people what you do, and then a one-liner. And so I'm going to show just a quick example of that on the website. So this is orthodontist is one of our clients. Straighter teeth, bigger smiles, braces and orthodontics for children and adults. It doesn't get any simpler than that.
It really doesn't.
I mean, tell people what you do. Don't make sure they're not confused. Okay, I think we've beat that drum. I think we've beat that drum pretty well today.
Well, with regard to that, though, I think that sometimes we're tempted to talk too much about ourselves in this stage. And I just thought maybe you could give us a few more pointers on why it's a bad idea to spend a lot of time talking about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. When people come here, so when you think about a story, you have a hero, you have a couple of different key characters in stories. You have the customer, or I'm sorry, you have the hero, who in our context is the customer. You have a guide, that is someone who helps the hero succeed. So in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker is the hero. Obi-Wan and Yoda are both guides. They're the ones who have the expertise, the ability, the empathy to help the hero succeed. So in the context of businesses and nonprofits, your business, your nonprofit is the guide. You're not the hero. And so what happens is when brands talk about themselves just straight out of the gate, here's what here's how many awards we've won. Here's how long we've been in business. Here's how many trucks we have in our fleet, et cetera, et cetera. What your audience hears is, oh, you're a hero because this story is all about you. And so what happens is you're going to miss out on opportunities. Now, there is a time and a place to clearly talk about what you do, to talk about how you help your client. But if the very first thing they see when they get to your website is about you, and it's not in context of what your customer needs, then you're going to miss out on opportunities.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Have you any other examples of brands that are doing this really well?
Of course, we're big Story Brand fans. I'm a Story Brand guy, but Story Brand does a very good job on their website and through all of their activities, communicating clearly. I mean, that's the whole basis of what they do. So, storybrand.com, and my internet connections. Yeah, sorry guys. I was going to pull this up, and here we go. So this is the Story Brand website, and this is one of the fun things about going live. Sometimes things don't always work the way you want them to. And so Story Brand does a really good job with their website. And so they've talked to you about the workshop, what you get from the workshop, and it goes through and just gives good, clear information. It talks about clarifying the message, making a plan, what's included, etc. So this is another web organization that does a really good job of, okay. Yeah, we're just gonna shut that down. There's my family.
The real.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of brands that are doing a good job, but there are a lot of brands that aren't. And that in and of itself can be a differentiator for people that are looking to grow and really stand out from their competitors. And especially now, I think there are a lot of industries that are going to be more competitive now than they were 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Because in some cases there are fewer customers. And so the brands that are competing, clarity can be a competitive advantage because it's not always the best brand that wins. Sometimes it's the one that can communicate the clearest and show that they're the most relevant for their their customers.
Right. Yeah. So how would you recap this? What are the main takeaways that we need to remember when
The thing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The big thing that I encourage people to think about, the reason we want to talk about these 3 stages is because your customers go through a process. This is just the natural process that we go through with any sort of relationship. And that's really fundamentally what we're doing. Good marketing helps establish a relationship. It's not about making a sale. Really what we're doing is we're building a relationship. We want to build trust and credibility, and that can take time. And we want to make sure that as we think through these different stages, that we make it easy for our customers to go through this stage. So one important thing is recognize that your customer's brain is just making snap judgments. They're making quick decisions without even really thinking about it. They get to your website, they're immediately making judgment calls. We talked about the halo effect, and some people are going to consider what you do relevant. Some people, nope, you're not relevant. And so what we want to do is use our words to be clear, use a headline. If you're out in an event, use a one-liner to clearly communicate what you do, the problem you solve, and how you make life better for your customers. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that you want to talk about yourself in the context of being a guide. In fact, that's my hat, is be the guide. Mm-hmm. You want to position yourself, talk about yourself at the right time. We'll talk about that more next week. So that people understand how you help them while not making yourself the hero of the story.
That's awesome. So tell us more about next week. What are we going to be talking about next time?
So next week, if you think about this first stage, curiosity, really boils down to what do you do? Who are you and what do you do? Next week, we're going to talk about enlightenment. This is really where we have the opportunity to start building trust and credibility. And that's going to be more of the question of, well, how do you do it? How do you make my life better? What does that look like if I were to work with you? If I were to become a part of your company or, your customer base, what does that look like? So we want to make sure so next week, we're going to talk about how to position yourself as that guide. How do you talk about yourself? Well, there are specific things to talk about and there's specific things not to talk about. We'll talk about how you can paint the picture of what it looks like for your customers to do business with you. How do you make life better? Well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how images and the words that can go along with that. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the tactics in that stage as well. And then, of course, that'll feed into what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks when we talk about commitment, because ultimately that's what we want to do. The end game is we want customers. We want people who we can serve through our services, our products, our nonprofits to make their life better. And if we skip these first couple of steps and we just go straight to the ask, if we, AnnieLaurie, it would be like, and I've got some horrible college dating stories, but it would be like going on a date with somebody on the first date and just proposing on the first date. Now we went, our college, you probably have a couple of stories where that actually worked, but 99% of people, if they get asked on the first date by somebody, hey, will you marry? No, no, back up.
Character in a Frozen movie. That's probably not going to work for you.
Yeah, exactly. and so, we're not Disney characters, but yeah, absolutely. So what happens sometimes is businesses will go straight to the ask. They go straight to the commitment level. Well, you haven't satisfied the curiosity. You haven't told people what you do,
right?
And you haven't taken the time to build trust. So by going through this, it increases the percentage of people who will say yes when you ask them to take the commitment. Whatever. We'll talk about the different kinds of commitments that can be asked for.
Right.
And we want to increase the likelihood that somebody's going to say yes.
Great.
So
that'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And I will say, if any of our viewers have any questions, feel free to toss that in the comments. We'd be happy to jump in and answer any questions that you might have, whether it's about the messaging, the website, any of the things that we've talked about. And while as we're wrapping up, just to remind folks, you can find this live stream. We also turn this into a podcast. So wherever you listen to your podcasts, You can find us, search for Wayfind Marketing Live. Follow us, subscribe. We'd love for, if you haven't followed us on Facebook, please go to facebook.com/Wayfind Marketing and like our page. We post almost daily useful information, resources, links to podcasts and whatnot. You can also get information at wayfindmarketing.com/live. And so anyway, thank you everybody for joining us today. Again, this is Wayfind Marketing Live, where we know marketing is hard, so we want to make it easier. We want to give you the tools and the resources that you need so you can conquer your marketing and grow your business and nonprofit. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next Friday here at noon. Have a great weekend, everybody.